in Bucharest, followed by stints at the Austrian Film Board and CBC Radio Canada in Montreal. Her films have been screened at prestigious international festivals such as Bilbao, Leipzig, Oberhausen, Bucharest, Chicago, and Montreal. And she's been honored with many international and national awards, including a Gemini in 1994 for her documentary Chez nous, c'est nous ici. And then following Teresa will be Jan Defer. So Jan is an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of Winnipeg. So Jan came all the way from Winnipeg today to be here. She's informed by 2 decades of publicly funded counseling clinical social work practitioner experience. Jan's course development, teaching, and research focuses on building public access to critical analysis of the mental health system. This analysis has been co-produced for decades by patients, ex-patients, survivors of psychiatry, academics, and professionals. Following Jan, we'll have Jeffrey Room. So Jeffrey Room is an associate professor in critical disability studies here at York, where he teaches Mad People's History, and he is co-founder of the Psychiatric Survivor Archives of Toronto. So please welcome our panelists. We'll begin with you, and I'll bring this.
My identity as a mad artist, author, and advocate has often been questioned. In a literature review, I explored this identity as I had just completed my bachelor's internship with Dr. Adam W.J. Davey, and I was given the feedback from another professor in my college. Why do you identify as mad? Especially since it's such a contested term, which was both bothersome to me at the time, but in retrospect, thought-provoking. After being introduced to mad studies, I realized I have always explored my label and challenged ableism through painting, yoga, poetry, film, classical Indian dance, using an interdisciplinary approach. I was recently asked by my doctor whether dance was truly beneficial for me. He asked, was dance beneficial to your well-being because you were manic, or has it always been beneficial to you? This question at its core sounded absurd to me and reeked of ableism, and it was later implied that dance was good for me because of my manic energy. However, we now know the power of dance and how good it is for the mind-body connection, regardless of a mental health diagnosis. Sanism, the othering of people perceived to have or diagnosed with a mental health disability, is a systemic issue in our society, especially in South Asian family systems. In my birth country of India, themes such as feminism, patriarchy, queerness, mental health, divorce, domestic abuse are what I would like to call an invisible existence within community discourses. I would like to take this opportunity, however, to shed light on the aspects of institutionalization, such as coercion, forced chemical and basically, injections and everything, and restraint, isolation. It was also recommended by doctors that the use of electroconvulsive therapy be used on me, which is known to be detrimental for patients due to memory lapses and bone fractures. Thanks to my mother, this didn't happen. I would still consider myself lucky as I was in my late 20s. However, I have witnessed elderly and often marginalized, racialized, and vulnerable patients who have been forced into an isolation room. And having that surveillance, knowledge, and power over patients as described by Foucault, influencing not only actions but thoughts, desires, and identities. This room in CAMH had a camera, a toilet in the far right corner, and a rock-solid bed. This was equivalent to a prison. How is this the solution for healing when all this experience creates this trauma? The worst part of this is my family was unaware of a lot of the ill treatments of patients. I recently took part in a research study on isolation and restraint, and I volunteered as I imagined there would have been some efforts to stop this ill treatment and exploitation of patients. I learned that the purpose of the study was to create a pamphlet to let patients and families know of these treatment methods before they get admitted and to share it on their website so that the institution can escape any legal trouble. I was paid $30 for participation for a lived experience that cannot be erased or even quantified in numbers or dollars. There had been some positive aspects wherein patients would have art therapy. But as we all know, this too is a way for the medical establishment as a means of assessment and surveillance knowledge and power, again over patients as described by Foucault. I can't pronounce his name. For example, I recall doing a painting and being asked a question by a therapist, what does this mean to you? Why does it have to mean anything? And even if it does mean something to me, I do not believe it has to be disclosed, especially as a way to gauge a patient's progress. Art is a medium of expression itself, apart from its therapeutic labels and uses. The dignity and agency that lies with mad artists is tarnished when it is used to solely diagnose conditions. Art goes beyond the tool of measuring sanity. Lastly, I would like to share some prose with you that I have recently written about my parents as I'm studying family relations, about our bond that is drenched in deep emotions for each other that often escapes our own understanding and remains unfinished. The pain in my back is of the memories that I carry so deeply, that are now engraved in my body. 2 blows to my back from my abusive partner, my ex-husband, a manifestation of my trauma. It is my body's embodiment and constant resistance to that which persists, my past. The past persists precisely because I choose to resist it. It is a past that finds me in the present every time I try to make newer, fresher memories with my mother. She is the same mother who has seen me live through multiple episodes and stood by my side, fueled by a fusion of duty, love, and guilt. The guilt of staying away from me in my childhood to fulfill her career and ambition. My mother says she's a feminist killjoy, but the inherent responsibilities that most South Asian mothers carry with them to their grave is that of sheer devotion and presence to their children, even at the cost of their own slow demise. The constant dichotomy that the society dictates of my mother versus what she inherently desires continue to dictate her emotions towards her life choices, never being able to be fully at peace with what was, what is, and what can be. The next piece of prose is, it's about my relationship with my father. I'm just trying to dig through that. It's difficult, way more complicated than my mom, I would imagine. There is a new awakening in me, a new birth. Truths that I knew to be true, but did not have the courage to face, now are my companions. They are helping me sail through the storm. Waves that would have normally engulfed me are now pushing me safely to the shore. A shore that I never have reached before. New, a new place, in a new time. An entirely new version of me, a new person, a complete transformation. Simply since I ensured that my voice not be silenced. Silenced and suppressed as it was before. Not only to myself, but now also to others with whom I may have a need to share my truth, or they a need to hear it. I have finally learned the art of speaking my truth, quietly and clearly. A sentence that was drilled into my Bible in childhood by my father. I would watch him exercise on a treadmill, as I would read out the words of Max Ehrmann's poem, Desiderata, Frozen in Time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you again because I feel like you've just so powerfully and eloquently shared your experience with us, and I really appreciate that. I think the other piece that I take away from the film and from what you've expressed now is the inner workings of the mental health system and the kind of coercive practices that are often, invisible to people outside of the system. And your courage in kind of outing that and becoming an advocate as a result of your experiences. So, and of course your use of art and poetry to express it all. So thank you so much. Teresa, over to you. Do you want this one?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Ishaa. Thank you, Shabnam. Thank you for inviting me here as an intruder, since I have very little knowledge about the medical system, the scientific domain, and I am going to impart some thoughts with you as ordinary spectator of a documentary film. This is what how I learn about Ishaa, how I learn about Shabnam, and how I learn about this relationship that was so powerful and so, at the same time, so uplifting in a way. What I found, I scribbled some thoughts, but what I found since the very beginning, because I've seen this film before, of course, Shabnam has done it in our program. What I found it extremely special was the honesty of the both voices. Usually, and this is something that I think belongs more to the North American culture, less to the European one that I come from. In Europe, there is a certain amount of cynicism and penchant towards depression. North America is the opposite side of the pendulum. It's the tendency to see everything in the bright light and with optimism and with, brushing over the negative and the pain. And what I found in this film is that there are both sides. It's a marriage between the pain and the suffering and the effort and the truth, the emotional truth that these both people go through, the difficult relationship, the difficulties this young woman has, the difficulties the mother has. They don't hide and they don't embellish and they don't sugarcoat it. And it's, I think the truth is always more uplifting than our desire to uplift it. And I'm extremely impressed and very happy to see that, to have met Ishaa now, the first time I met her, and to see this very accomplished and bright and intelligent and sensitive woman, so articulated and so such a deep thinker, and I think this is the part that uplifts the film, meeting her in person and seeing that all this effort and the long and difficult road that, in fact, she is the main character in this story. Of course, the mother is there, but Ishaa was the main character who had to do the work and the very difficult journey. So this is the uplifting that I'm extremely happy and emotional to have met her and to have known her in person. There was I wanted to say that the film brought to my mind an old Italian film that was called Senza Pelle, meaning without skin. And it was about a young man who had some mental issues. And what the message of the film was, I cannot remember the whole story, but the message of the film is that these people walk through life really without skin, meaning in an extremely state of vulnerability. It's like there is no protection, right? The skin protects our body, and they walk through life in totally vulnerable and unprotected mentally state of mind, and that watching Unfinished brought to my mind this raw and vulnerable and unprotected way that the the people who suffer from this mental illnesses, disabilities, have to endure. And also there was another thing that brought my mind is film. Back in Romania, I met a very interesting psychologist while I was researching for a documentary, but it was not related to mental health. But in his office there was a saying on a wall which stayed with me ever since, and I'm trying to translate. I hope it will make sense. It said, the absence of a mental problem, let's say problem, is a sign of health, but not a sign of life. So I think that life, going through life, embracing life in all its aspects and its fullest, cannot leave us without some scars. Normal, abnormal, extreme, in the middle. We all have some mental signs, scars, whatever. I don't know how to name it. So that's the sign of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. I was really struck with your kind of naming sort of this marriage between pain and suffering and then these kind of incredible moments of joy. And I was thinking in particular of your teaching dancing to that small group of children. That was just such a beautiful moment. And then just your last comment, I think that is so powerful, that the absence of illness does not mean that there's life, right? So thank you for that. Turn things over to Jan.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for the very special privilege of being part of this gathering and this whole film experience and the conversation that has been in play long before I crossed paths with any of you. And so, yeah, I just wanted you to know that it means a lot to me to be here. I listened to the film many times since the link was shared with me, and I listened, I think from many different vantage points, maybe at the same time, partly as somebody who teaches courses in mental health, in critical mental health, teaches the critical scholarship in the field of mental health that the public normally doesn't get access to. Listened as a researcher, a writer, also listened as a parent and as a child, as a daughter to parents. I was especially interested in how the mental health system shows up in the film, in the claims that it makes, and different words that were shared in the film really caught my attention, I think, early on. The mom's words, I felt I had no choice. And I couldn't help but wonder if it would have made a difference at some point to know or to have some critical information put on the table that would suggest that psychiatry has its ways of understanding and explaining. It has its vocabularies and its practices, all oriented to deficit, and that psychiatry offers one explanation, one discourse, and that there are many to choose from. I was struck by the claims of the system throughout the film that that mental illness or mental disorder is a brain disease, is about genetics, has to do with genetic predisposition. And even now, as I'm speaking, I wonder, I really wonder, I don't mean that sort of as a rhetorical statement, but I really wonder, does it make a difference to know that the bipolar diagnoses and the other diagnoses in psychiatry are not made on the basis of genetic information? That there is actually no scientifically valid biomarker evidence of pathology for psychiatry's diagnoses of illness. So that, in other words, or another way of saying it is that these diagnoses are not made on the basis of a lab test result or a brain scan or any medical test that involves tissues and fluids. And now's a good time to say there's no doubt that people suffer. And I think this is why I was so moved every time I saw the film. No question whatsoever in the critical scholarship, but the question I think that keeps on popping up is the medicalization of human suffering through psychiatry, is that the best framing? Is it scientifically, ethically, intellectually legitimate? Does it have integrity? Who gets to decide whose suffering is normal? And I was thinking of the daughter's description of the world of dance as a world in which there is no normal and abnormal binary. So, yeah, if you have not found pathology in the rest of medicine, it would be premature to begin speaking about genetic predisposition. Genetic predisposition is not scientifically meaningful if you have not yet located pathology.
This is not what is researched.
This is not what is researched?
Yeah,
How do you mean?
I'm asking.
What I'm saying, I guess, is that for decades we've had critique of the core messages of the mental health system, which is rooted in psychiatry, interdisciplinary field, and the critique is interdisciplinary as well. We've had a lot of research related to misinformation and potential for harm in the field, but members of the public rarely get access to it, especially at key junctures when they're poised to enter the mental health system. So I guess I feel like every person is entitled to their own understanding and their own framework, whatever fits best for them. I respect everybody's right to arrive at their, at their own convictions. But I am afraid that psychiatry often gets there before we get to make a choice, and that psychiatry places all of us under its pathologizing lenses. I can't help but think back to a time when I sat on a little committee of some kind at the Health Sciences Center in Winnipeg. It was a group that was designated to determine the readiness of different lung transplant candidates. And I recall a psychiatrist in the group defaulting a candidate because they were doing well. And so even doing well can be read through a lens of deficit when it's a psychiatric lens, because the thinking was they shouldn't be doing well. Do they realize how dire their circumstances are? There's a disorder diagnosis for everyone. And all of us are part of psychiatry's psychiatrizing lens. So, you know, the words fight this, really fight this. For me, I feel like it's more than fighting the pain and the struggle, but fighting a system that disposes of us, that pathologizes our struggles without evidence of pathology, and thereby individualizes our suffering, and decontextualizes our suffering, and depoliticizes our suffering. So, for me, the psychiatric story, it can't be enough, and I do not respect its authority, but I respect the rights of everybody to arrive at a discourse and an understanding that feels right for them. So maybe that's all I'll say for now.
Just really appreciating you sort of troubling the way the system shows up, not just in the film, but in society, right? And particularly the role of psychiatry. And to Teresa's point, just to point out that there's been lots of genetic studies done and no biomarkers, or there's no evidence of any kind of genetic predisposition or genetic cause of mental distress, right? So the claims are made not based on any form of science, right? So thank you for that. I'll turn things over to Jeffrey.
Thanks everyone, and glad to be back. Shabnam, whom we've known for a few years, and to meet Ishaa for the first time today. Very glad to meet you, and also everybody else on the panel as well. And thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here, honored to be here, and very moved by the film as well, and by the vulnerability of Shabnam and Ishaa putting yourself out there in a way that's very vulnerable, isn't it? And that needs to be acknowledged. It's emotions out there in personal life experiences, which is very important to show and good to acknowledge, because the immense emotional labor the film would have taken at the time, and every single time you watch it to this day. So it's like reliving difficult things as well. So it's very important to acknowledge that as well. And also I very much like how you integrated the old films into I'm a big fan of old films. I was telling my 12-year-old son, the older the film, the better the film. He disagrees, but anyway.
My Isha's film and my film school, so
Okay,
it was banned.
Oh, the film you showed. Oh, it was banned. Holy smokes, isn't that something? Well, I'm glad you unbanned it for this film. Yes, very good. It's well worth seeing. It was very disturbing, but very worth seeing and viewing and contrasting Isha's comments and experiences as well. And it shows how these are not just the past. History is the present too, with being restrained. You talked about that at one point. So this is just a few years ago. So and of course it goes on to this day. So we know that that's what kind of a treatment is that, and treating people who have distressed, and to be restraining people under immense pain of whatever is going on. So it shows that these criticisms certainly are very important to impart and connect with the past as well. And also I liked all the naturalistic imagery in the film. I kept trying to think where was that. You were telling me, but it's so nice to see all of that and to make these connections between the natural world, which is very much influencing people's mental states, isn't it, and physical states, the world in which we live, isn't it? It's a very important point about impacting people's physical and mental health. There's no question about that. And so the way in which that's integrated in the film is very important. I really like the comment, especially where Ishaa, you said, I am Ishaa Chopra first and I'm bipolar last. And I thought that was a great way of...
This is very important to me.
Yeah, very important. I'm so glad that you said that, Ishaa, and you included Shabnam, because it says so much about self-dignity and trying to reclaim oneself in the midst of all of this turmoil going on. I'm not sure what to think, is it, with all of everything happening and going back and forth into the hospital and so forth, and all the emotional turmoil. And it was nice to see the connection with your brother as well in the film, the rabbit ears. So I think it was rabbit ears. That's what I interpreted as. Whatever the years were, so that was very nice, because it shows people making these connections and how important personal supports are in these efforts and trying to make those connections, while at the same time the immense connection between Ishaa and Shabnam, mother and daughter, so important and also so intense, very important to point out about the immense stress that can happen, but also the immense love that comes with stress. And love is bound up with stress and turmoil and so many good things that happen in between, isn't it? So it's very, and the ways in which you support each other is so very important. And the dancing as well, I thought was very evocative of how the arts or creativity is expressed as a release, as sort of, or maybe not a release, that's not the right way of putting it, but as an alternative to the medical model approach.
But I think there is something else in that dance.
Okay,
If I can.
Well, of course, by all means.
Sorry?
When I saw the scene with the dance,
I've seen also something else. I've seen purpose. So, she found purpose because she was not just dancing. Then she put the dance to good use, so to speak. She was teaching kids. She was giving through that. What she learned, she was taking it into purpose, into, giving.
So that actually, I had stopped dancing. That was after my divorce, where I had experienced domestic abuse for about a year. And the dance came back to me through the joy of the children. And I realized, what am I sulking about? And I started dancing again. And that's when I made the connect between my dance through the joy of the children, which led me to do early childhood.
I psychologized you.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, I'll just add something. I think the purpose of life is to find the meaning, right? So for me, it was a struggle to find what's going on, and you rightly pointed out, I was outside the system and I was struggling to find answers, which I couldn't get until I started my own research and started looking at books and realized there's nothing like normality. And pushing back against that and demanding answers. And it all happened in the course of this film. Although the struggle has been there since she got diagnosed at the age of 16. So the silence for me was a very long-lived silence. Until in the safe space of the MFA program, I wish Phil Hoffman was here. His tender guidance, and of course Manfred was there as an ethical, do the right thing. But I could only do it in the safe space of this program. I don't think I could have made this film anywhere else. And it was not going to be a film to be released because it was edited during the pandemic. So I was furiously editing 6 months. Isha in and out of hospital, she would come back. I said, look, this is what I have. What do you think? What do you think? You know, and it was quite uncanny because even in that state, in fact, I thought she was more, she made more sense to me when she was in that state. Somehow she was talking the truth, speaking the truth as it is.
The aspect of hypomania.
No, but whatever it is, what you can label whatever you want. But I thought she made so much sense because I would listen and look at the footage again and again. I said, God, she's making sense. This has to be in the film because she's making sense.
She made a lot of sense.
She made a lot of sense.
But a lot of the poetry I wrote also was in
Well, at the hospital. Yeah, you were in the
I
hospital.
was just writing. In fact, when they put
And
me
I'm
in the
like,
isolation
record it.
Mama,
That filmmaker in me.
when they put me in the isolation room, because you can't take anything in there with you, but the nurse, one nurse I remember, one male Asian nurse, was very nice and he gave me a pencil. He gave me a pencil and I actually, it's okay, Mom. Okay. So he gave me a pencil. There was the reason I'm describing like this is because it's visually so strong in my memory. There was a male Asian nurse who handed me a small pencil because they don't allow pens for some reason. But I had that notebook, and because it was a whole, I believe like more than 24 hours that I was in there, in that room overnight. So I wrote my bowls and my Kathak compositions because I realized that if I don't do that, I mean, I would probably go mad, right? Like you're in there in that isolation, what are you gonna do? And now I see a lot of, actually, this is a bit different, but you see a lot of activists who actually sent to prison, and the one thing they don't want creative people to have is like pens or pencils. That they say that that's even more powerful than a gun.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, that's a good point. It leads into the point that the gut. Oops.
Sorry, my glasses get caught in my hair. He's telling me to get a haircut.
You should get bald.
Should go get a haircut like. Anyway, so that's a very good point about the gun. The pencil is like a gun. A very good point. It seemed like a gun. That is, the gun is a bad thing, but I see it's a good thing. But where is it? Where is it? Come home. Genetics loads the gun, and society pulls the trigger. And that was quite a statement to make, and of course.
Just the mic, please.
Oh, I beg your pardon. So yeah, the genetics loads the gun, and society pulls the trigger. And I think that's putting a bit too much on genetics. And anyway, Jan has talked about, so I don't need to say too much more. But it also kind of excuses. It puts all the load on society rather than on the medical profession for pathology. I think that we have to do this. Society is doing. So anyway, that's a problem, an issue too, isn't it? That brings up, and so but it goes back to some of the points you were making earlier as well about all of the stress that happened. And I was especially interested where you came home, the welcome home. You were a child then. That was a welcome home.
Oh yes, Welcome Home was it was in Edmonton,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that was my very first visit to Canada, right? But the background more to it is because I was mostly in boarding school up until then.
Mm-hmm.
So that place, that was a mansion. I've never had a room to myself. I was always sharing with people, students at a residential school. My first residential school was, there was like a little bit of physical abuse, and they would pull ears, and it would hurt for little kids and slap us and all. Finally, I told my grandma. But the second place was phenomenal. It was a Jiddu Krishnamurti Foundation school, Sayadri school. In Pune, and that's where also my mom was a teacher, so she actually left everything to come and join me, and that's now we're here because of that. So.
Very good point. Thanks. The welcome home thing reminded me of something because the stress of coming home from the hospital, that is something kind of touched on.
That too, the connect,
The
yeah,
connection.
she could, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
also jumping time and space, and that's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Also the cyclical nature of the
Mm.
situation and the circumstance,
Right,
and relating one to the other.
right.
Also, in my support paper, I had written a section, where I used to go and pick up my daughter from school and drop her to school, and then now it was dropping her to the hospital and getting her back home. So relating that whole cyclical, something like bolero,
Oh,
so it has, and it builds to a crescendo, and it
Right.
comes to this point. So I mean, you can write a lot about things. I could have written my PhD thesis on this film actually, if I was permitted to, but I want to think of something else to do.
Let her do your daughter
She's
do
doing
the
it.
PhD.
She's
I'm wanting to, I want to interview my mother for my own thesis now. Let's see if she says yes. It's on record now.
This is just such an engaging conversation. Jeffrey, are you finished with your remarks?
One other thing I was just going to say, the welcome home was evocative to me because you were a child. The first time I was in the psych hospital was when I was 14, and anyway, to make a long story short, when I was finally discharged, my parents put a sign on me like that. And it reminded me, it just,
Oh my God.
God rest their dear souls, but anyway, it reminded me about that. So that really had a lot of meaning. I'm so glad you included it.
I do want to give Shabnam some time on this agenda to.
She had her time on the screen.
You had your time on the screen, but is there anything else you want to?
I wanted to say why Teresa is here. She's not an intruder. She's very relevant to this film because when she saw it, she got it. And I was so worried about the validity of this film, the ethics of this film. Will this film ever have a life outside of our lives? Because it's always important to me when I make a documentary that it make a difference to some community and speak to someone. And it spoke to Teresa. And when she told me that, because Teresa is like, and in the MFA or in the film program, she is a terror. People are scared of her, okay? I was petrified of her. I have to admit, on camera. But I respected her immensely. So her opinion really mattered to me. And I know some of her life story and her struggles and her pain, because pain is important, right? I think pain is essential in all our lives, in our creative lives. And the creativity is what is the balm that we use, to heal, recover from the pain, but the pain doesn't disappear altogether. The wounds remain, at some level. And they should. We must not forget what we've experienced. So it's always important for me, even when I revisit the film, like today, it stirred up some anger that how did I allow myself to stay outside of the system for so long? Today I'm on family advisories of these hospitals, telling them what they need to change. And I'm really, and aggressively so. We didn't mention the CAMH, but you saw CAMH.
Yeah.
CAMH was a destructive force. Sorry to say that it's going to go on your site, but I'm fine with that.
No, I completely agree with you, Mom, and one of the reasons I also didn't apply to be on the CAMH PPAC, or because maybe you were there and I didn't want to see, how, because they have patient and families together there, right? Oh, it is separate, okay, well maybe I can. But anyway, I'm at Sunnybrook, but because I was also at Sunnybrook. But the interesting thing to note is that they did not, maybe it was mentioned in the film about the medicine, they did not listen to take a particular pill that worked for me since age 16. And once I had it, I was fine. Actually, the reason I felt sick was because I stopped taking the medicine. And that was very stupid. Of course, I'm not going to ever do that again. But
And I think the film is also a kind of a reminder to folks that medication is not all bad. It's just that you have to be in charge of the dosing that happens. You know, you have to listen to your body and you have to tell the doctors how you're feeling about it.
Yes.
Because
yes.
that is something we're so scared because we don't know.
Yes, and actually this experience gave me that agency where I can tell my doctor. Actually, recently my doctor told me, she said that, you know, maybe you should increase your dose because you're starting your university, you never know what might happen. And I started to take an increased dose and I was not feeling myself. And I told her I'm not going to go through with this. And she said, but I'm letting you know. And I said, no, I think I'm going to be okay. And I was fine. So I realized that because the thing is we lose faith in ourselves. And I think the system almost, I wouldn't say that the system wants that, but eventually that's what ends up happening, is that a lot of patients have so much self-stigma, they lose faith in the system, they lose faith in themselves, and then the cycle keeps repeating where they have to keep admitting themselves inside, or somebody admits them or takes charge of them, like, you know, the community orders. So it's just, and one thing, since I'm here, I just want to mention, although it does not directly relate to us, is the whole concept of MAID and medical aid and dying, and how they're, I don't know if you could speak to that, but
I think that's another big
no, but you know what, it is very important. It is very important because the reason is because I am on a lot of committees, and they're peer support workers who are actually handing out pamphlets with about this information, where they're like, oh, you know, you should advertise this, and it's sad. I feel it is very sad because how can we give up on life? I know maybe in some instances, anyway, I'm not going to say anything on record because I'm still processing it myself, but it's very, very chilling, the kind of, and this is also very, the history is dark, because if you go back, people were sent to asylums and they never saw the light of day. So I'm grateful that I'm born in this age, but we still have a long way to go.
There's so much to be said on these topics. So I'm conscious that Teresa has to catch a plane. So I want to give you, if you have anything further you want to say before we. Thank you.
I'm just thinking, I don't know where to put this thought, but we live here in a very rich society, and I'm thinking of my own experience when I went through a very severe depression back in Romania, really severe depression. And what happened was that the government, the state, was not the government, it was the state, was funding various places, speaking of Jeffrey, in the nature, in the mountains, in the Carpathian Mountains, surrounded by the beautiful, beautiful, soothing landscapes, and would send people that had this, not very severe afflictions like depression, bipolarity, in those places, to be treated in those places concomitantly with the nature treatment. In a place of relaxation, of calm, of beauty, of nature. And whereas I was in a position that I needed such a place here, not for me, for my son, and there was none available. Even with paid, particular, like paid, not funded by the government, none. Was the words in hospitals, these very cold, these very medical, very clinical, very scary places that I think Ishaa was talking about, and I was, shocked. I said, but this is a rich country compared to a communist country that I came from, and there was none. So maybe that's somewhere about what we were talking here. Improvement, care, attention, and money put into this aspect of medicine. And thank you so much.
Yes, I'm really sorry. Thank you so much. This is just a small token.
Oh, thank you so much. And
Be well.
Good night.